Story 1. I've always been a fan of the eerie and unexplained, so when I stumbled upon apartment 13B on Airbnb, I couldn't resist. The listing had a cryptic charm to it, with a dark history that piqued my curiosity. The description mentioned strange occurrences, mysterious shadows, and whispered rumors of a haunted past. It was perfect for a paranormal enthusiast like myself. The host, a woman named Emily, seemed friendly enough in her messages. She didn't shy away from the property's ominous reputation, acknowledging the stories but dismissing them as mere superstitions. She assured me that it was all in good fun, a way to attract thrill-seekers like myself. I arrived at the apartment on a rainy Friday evening. It was an old building tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, its faded facade shrouded in mist. Apartment 13B was on the top floor, accessible only through a narrow, creaky staircase that spiraled upwards like a sinister vortex. As I entered the apartment, the first thing that struck me was the dim lighting and the musty scent of ancient wood. The decor was decidedly old-fashioned, with faded floral wallpaper and antique furniture that seemed to have witnessed centuries of stories. It had an eerie, timeless charm that was both unsettling and inviting. I unpacked my bags and settled in for the night. Emily had left a handwritten note on the dining table, welcoming me and encouraging me to explore the apartment freely. She emphasized that the tales of haunting were nothing more than local legends. I decided to start my investigation by setting up a few cameras in the living room and the bedroom. After all, if I were to experience anything supernatural, I wanted to capture it on film. The first night was relatively uneventful. I lay in bed, watching the flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls. The wind howled outside, and the old building seemed to groan with every gust. I began to wonder if the stories were just that, stories. Just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard it, a faint, distant whisper. At first, I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on my ears, but then it grew clearer. It was a woman's voice, soft and mournful, calling out my name. Sarah. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't told anyone my name since I checked in. Who could be calling me? The voice continued, growing louder and more insistent. Sarah, help me. I summoned every ounce of courage and followed the voice, which seemed to lead me to the bathroom. The light was dim, and my reflection in the antique mirror appeared distorted, almost otherworldly. I slowly opened the medicine cabinet, and to my shock, I found a faded photograph wedged between the bottles of aspirin and cough syrup. It was a black and white image of a young woman, her eyes filled with sadness. I felt an inexplicable connection to her, as though she were trying to communicate something from beyond the grave. Over the next few days, I delved deeper into the history of apartment 13B. It turned out that the building had been constructed in the late 1800s and had a dark history. The most chilling revelation was that a young woman named Eliza had lived in the apartment decades ago. She had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and her body had never been found. As I researched further, I discovered that Eliza had been an artist who had been deeply troubled in her final years. She was rumored to have communicated with spirits through her paintings, and some believed that her obsession with the supernatural had led to her demise. The more I learned about Eliza, the more I felt a connection to her. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was the one who had whispered my name that first night. I decided to reach out to Emily, the host, to see if she had any additional information about Eliza. Emily agreed to meet me in person. She arrived at the apartment, a somber expression on her face. She admitted that there was more to the story than she had initially let on. Emily confessed that she was Eliza's great-granddaughter and that the apartment had been in their family for generations. She explained that Eliza had indeed been obsessed with the supernatural and had conducted seances in the apartment. One fateful night, during a particularly intense session, something had gone horribly wrong. Eliza had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only her troubled artwork and a legacy of mystery. Emily believed that Eliza's spirit still lingered in the apartment, unable to find peace. She had been drawn to my presence, hoping that I could help uncover the truth and bring closure to her restless soul. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Emily and I decided to conduct a seance of our own. We gathered in the living room, surrounded by Eliza's paintings. As we chanted incantations and called out to the spirit world, the room grew icy cold. The candles flickered wildly, and the air seemed to thicken with an otherworldly presence. Then, in a rush of energy, Eliza's spirit manifested before us. She appeared as a translucent figure, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. She reached out to me, and I could feel her pain, her need for closure. Through a series of whispers and ghostly images, Eliza revealed the truth of her disappearance. She had indeed made contact with a malevolent spirit during one of her seances, and it had lured her into a parallel dimension, trapping her there for all eternity. She had been trying to reach out to the living, seeking help to break free. Determined to save Eliza's soul, Emily and I embarked on a perilous journey into the otherworldly realm where she was trapped. Armed with ancient incantations and a deep resolve, we conducted a final ritual. The apartment trembled, and the boundary between our world and the spirit world blurred. In a heart-stopping moment, we succeeded in breaking the malevolent spirit's hold on Eliza. She was free at last, her spirit glowing with ethereal light. With a tearful smile, she thanked us and crossed over to the afterlife, leaving behind a sense of peace and closure. With Eliza's departure, apartment 13B lost its eerie aura. The whispers and shadows ceased, and the apartment felt strangely warm and welcoming. Emily and I became close friends, bonded by our shared experience and our determination to unravel the mysteries of the supernatural. As for me, I left the apartment with a profound sense of wonder and a newfound appreciation for the unknown. The Airbnb horror story had turned into a hauntingly beautiful tale of redemption and closure, proving that sometimes, the most unsettling mysteries can lead to the most extraordinary discoveries. In the end, apartment 13B taught me that the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we could ever imagine, and that sometimes, it takes a daring adventure into the unknown to find the answers we seek. Story 2. Seeking solace in nature, I stumbled upon an Airbnb listing for a secluded cabin nestled deep in the heart of a lush forest. The cabin, surrounded by towering pines, promised a retreat from the chaos of daily life. The photos of the cozy interior and the peaceful surroundings were too tempting to resist. The host, a woman named Clara, was warm and welcoming in her messages. She described the cabin as a hidden gem, a place where the stresses of the world could be left behind. Eager for a tranquil escape, I booked my stay. The journey to the cabin was an adventure in itself. The road meandered through dense woods, and as I approached, the scent of pine filled the air. The cabin, with its rustic charm and a stone fireplace, was even more inviting in person. Clara had left a handwritten note on the kitchen table, inviting me to make myself at home and to enjoy the peace and quiet of the forest. She mentioned that the cabin had a rich history but didn't go into detail. I settled in, ready to savor the serenity of the woods. The first few days at the cabin were perfect. I explored the forest, enjoyed the solitude, and listened to the soothing sounds of nature. But as night fell, a sense of unease crept over me. Subtle, unexplained phenomena began to occur. Soft, whispering voices would drift through the cabin, barely audible at first, then growing more distinct. I told myself it was the wind or the forest's nocturnal creatures, but the voices grew louder and more insistent. One night, as I was reading by the fire, a voice called out from the shadows. "Help us." My heart quickened as I tried to locate the source of the voice, but there was no one in sight. The cabin seemed to creak and groan around me, as if it held secrets just beyond my grasp. Determined to uncover the source of the voices, I searched for clues within the cabin. I found a collection of old journals hidden away in a dusty trunk. The journals belonged to a woman named Eleanor, who had lived in the cabin many years ago. Eleanor's writings revealed a story of unrequited love, a lost family fortune, and a connection to the forest that bordered the cabin. She had been drawn to the woods, believing them to be enchanted and hiding a long-forgotten treasure. Eleanor's obsession had led her deeper into the forest, where she had discovered an ancient, overgrown pathway. She believed that this pathway held the key to her family's fortune and had dedicated her life to uncovering its secrets. One night, as I was reading Eleanor's journals, the whispers returned. This time, they were accompanied by faint, ghostly apparitions that moved through the cabin. I could see them out of the corner of my eye, their spectral forms flickering in and out of existence. I realized that these apparitions were the voices that had called out for help. They were trapped souls, bound to the cabin and the forest, unable to find peace. Driven by a sense of responsibility, I decided to follow Eleanor's path into the forest, hoping to uncover the secrets that would release the trapped spirits. As I ventured deeper into the woods, guided by Eleanor's journal entries, I came across the long-forgotten pathway she had described. It led to a hidden grove where an ancient tree stood, its roots entwined with a small, ornate chest. With trembling hands, I opened the chest, revealing a collection of letters and a family heirloom, a delicate silver locket. The letters contained heartfelt apologies and messages of forgiveness, written by Eleanor's lost love. As I read the letters aloud, the air seemed to shimmer with an ethereal light. The trapped spirits began to materialize, their expressions transforming from sadness to relief. With a final whisper of gratitude, the spirits faded into the night, leaving behind a sense of closure and peace. The following morning, I returned to the cabin, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. Eleanor's haunting had come to an end, and the cabin felt lighter and more inviting. I found a small memorial in the cabin, dedicated to Eleanor and her lost love. It seemed that Clara had known about the haunting all along but had kept it a secret, hoping that a stranger like me could finally bring peace to the trapped souls. As I left the cabin and the enchanting forest behind, I carried with me a sense of wonder and amazement for the mysteries of the natural world. The Airbnb experience had been an extraordinary journey into the past, a reminder that sometimes, the most unexpected adventures can lead to profound discoveries and a sense of connection to the world around us. Story 3. I had always been fascinated by abandoned places, especially those with a dark and mysterious history. So when I stumbled upon an Airbnb listing for an abandoned asylum, I couldn't resist the opportunity to spend a night exploring its eerie corridors. The listing promised a one-of-a-kind experience, with the chance to uncover the asylum's secrets. The host, a man named Samuel, assured me that it was perfectly safe, and he provided a detailed waiver to sign, absolving him of any responsibility for accidents or injuries. The asylum, named St. Agnes Sanitarium, had been closed for decades. It stood as a decaying relic on the outskirts of a small, isolated town. The building itself was imposing, with tall, Gothic-style towers that loomed over the surrounding trees. The windows were boarded up, and ivy crawled up the cracked and weathered walls. It was a place that sent shivers down my spine just looking at it. I arrived at the asylum late in the afternoon, my excitement tinged with trepidation. Samuel had left a key in a hidden compartment, and I let myself in. The air inside was heavy and damp, and a musty odor permeated every room. Dust motes floated through the beams of sunlight that filtered in through the boarded windows. I wandered through the dimly lit hallways, my footsteps echoing eerily. The asylum was a labyrinth of crumbling walls and forgotten memories. As I explored, I couldn't help but imagine the lives of the people who had once lived within these walls, their cries for help and the torment they must have endured. The sun began to set, casting long, ominous shadows. I decided to set up my camera equipment in one of the larger rooms. I had brought a digital recorder, night vision goggles, and a flashlight. My plan was to document any paranormal activity that might occur during the night. As darkness settled over the asylum, I started to feel a growing sense of unease. The air seemed to thicken, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I began my investigation by asking questions into the recorder, hoping to capture any potential EVP. "Is there anyone here with us?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. For a while, there was only silence. But then, a faint whisper seemed to respond, so faint I could barely make out the words. Help. Us. My heart raced as I listened to the playback. It was as though the voices of the past were reaching out to me from the darkness. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I decided to explore further. As I moved deeper into the asylum, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the temperature dropped dramatically. My breath misted in the frigid air. I reached a door at the end of a corridor, and as I pushed it open, I was met with a sight that froze me in my tracks. The room beyond was bathed in a ghostly blue light, and it was filled with spectral figures. Patients from the past, their eyes empty and hollow, stared back at me. I stumbled backward in shock, my heart pounding. The figures didn't move, but their presence was suffocating. It was as though they were reliving their torment in a never-ending loop. Terrified, I fled the room and rushed back to the main corridor. I had seen enough, and I needed to get out of the asylum. But as I reached the front door, it slammed shut with a deafening crash, trapping me inside. Panic surged through me as I desperately tried to open the door. It was as if an invisible force held it closed. I could feel a malevolent energy in the air, and the whispers grew louder and more insistent. Stay with us. Forever. I realized then that Samuel's waiver had not been for accidents or injuries. It was a sinister agreement that bound me to the asylum, condemning me to share the fate of the tormented souls trapped within its walls. With every ounce of strength, I fought against the force that held the door closed. Finally, with a final burst of determination, I managed to break free and stumbled out into the night. The asylum's door slammed shut behind me, and I knew that I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. I left the asylum behind, vowing never to return. The experience had shaken me to my core, and I knew that I had ventured too close to the edge of the supernatural. The abandoned asylum had revealed its dark secrets, and I had narrowly avoided becoming one of them. As I drove away from that accursed place, I couldn't help but wonder how many other curious souls had been lured in by the promise of adventure, only to be ensnared by the malevolent spirits that called St. Agnes Sanitarium their home. It was a nightmare I would never forget, a chilling reminder that not all Airbnb listings are what they seem.